Nice to see you too. It's been a while.
Cat, please ask Nikiwe to join as well.
Okay, let me do that. I think there was a miscommunication on time.
No, but you have. Wait. No, but you have got the calendar link, no? In a calendar,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
So
I have the
according
calendar
to
link.
according to that, we have to join, right?
Okay.
So is there cold? Is there cold
Oh, what
at your
the?
place?
Yes, it's good. It's good, so far so good. Just looking to expand this mental health work. Yes. So I'm grateful that we are doing this webinar.
Yes, even we are also very much grateful that we are connecting and we are doing good work for the students, for the audience, whoever is connecting.
Yeah, yes. This was very important for their learning as
Yes.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
So is she joining Nikiwe?
Yes, I think like we said on the time, we had discussed to join at 10. So the poster says 10 o'clock.
So it is
So
time there. So
the time here is 9:30. So it's
oh,
like 30 minutes early in. So I think she was committed with other things.
okay. So what we can do, Kat, we can start with our presentation, and then later on, when it is 10 over there, she may join us and she may start her presentation. How it is?
That's fine.
Parul, you can start now. We are live.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You are mute.
Meghavi, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Good morning, one and all present here, our international guests, and good afternoon to other ones. A warm and heartfelt welcome to all present here for today's insightful and timely webinar and expert talk on strengthening mental health resilience in times of catastrophes and emergencies, organized by Parul Institution of Social Work, Parul University. Mental health has always been a cornerstone of human well-being, but in times of crisis and emergencies, its significance becomes even more virtual. Today's sessions brings together eminent experts who will guide us on its building resilience, compassion, and strength during the such upcoming challenging times. So now, furthermore, to begin this session, it is my privilege to extend a heartful welcome to our respected Dean, sir, that is Professor M.N. Parmar, Dean and Head, Faculty of Social Work, Parul University, Ms. Nikiwe Mtema, designation to the Executive Director of Rugare Mental Health Organization. Accordingly, same vice as Ms. Kate Chipili, designated social worker and co-founder of Amani Mental Health Foundation. Now, Dr. Parmar is an eminent academician. According to it, it is over 37 years of experience he guided in the field of social work, education, and research. Under his guidance, 10 PhD scholars have successfully completed their research, and 8 more are currently registered. He has been actively associated with numerous NGOs and has contributed to 22 national and state level research projects. His leadership continues to inspire both students and faculty members to strive for excellence in social work practice and research. We are truly honored to have you with us today, sir. We kindly request you to address the gathering and share your words of freedom and wisdom today.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to welcome all three speakers. Nikiwe Mtema, Executive Director, Mental Health Organization, Malawi. Ms. Kate Chipili, Social Worker and Co-Founder of Amani Mental Health Foundation. And our own Dr. Neha Dubey, Assistant Professor, and also the Program Coordinator, Ms. Meghavi. It's a matter of great pleasure for the Faculty of Social Work that today we have wonderful webinar on the topic strengthening mental health resilience in the time of catastrophe and emergencies. I think this seminar, this workshop, sorry, the webinar will be very, very useful for all of us because we all see the kind of the emergencies that are taking place, the kind of disturbances that are taking place, and in such situation, if students and professional social workers, if they are getting some kind of guidance, that will be a very, very useful to all of us because any kind of the disturbance emergencies affect to the mental health of a person. So in such situation, what is to be done, and how we can regulate ourselves. So therefore, this particular the webinar is the most meaningful, the knowledge enrichment activity, and it will enhance the knowledge of every one of us. So I'm extremely happy to welcome you, both speakers and also our own, the speaker from Faculty of Social Work, and also my teacher, colleague, and students from the Faculty of Social Work. So once again, I welcome, all the speaker to this webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your words that are inspiring and motivational at the same time. Now, as we have Ms.Kate with us, we'll start with her saying. We extend our welcome, ma'am, to you, co-founder of Amani Mental Health Foundation. Ms.Kate is a certified social worker with extensive experience in mental health service and community advocacy. She earned her Bachelor of Social Work from Parul University itself, specialization in clinical mental health and trauma-informed care. Her expertise spans across community centers, crisis programs, and NGOs, where she has worked on treating anxiety, depression, and PTSD. She's also a passionate advocate for reducing mental health stigma and improving access to care. Now, I invite you, ma'am, to kindly share her views today on today's topic.
Kate, over to you. And now, please unmute yourself, and we can now proceed for webinar.
Okay, thank you so much, Neha ma'am, for the opportunity to conduct this webinar session. I will be shortly sharing my presentation on strengthening resilience. Let me just share the screen. I hope you can all see. Are you able to all see? Okay, yeah, so my presentation will be on our topic, strengthening mental health resilience in times of catastrophes and emergencies. My presentation will focus mostly on the people with lived experience. So let me start by introducing what catastrophes and emergencies are in this case. So we're talking about whether they're natural disasters, pandemics, conflicts, or industrial accidents. These all create profound communities and individuals. And beyond physical injuries and material losses, there's also a significant event of psychological distress that requires immediate and sustained mental health support. And so also another key point for this presentation is the access to mental health services during these emergencies. In most cases, mental health is overlooked and it's not really regarded as very important. And so in these catastrophes and emergencies, we see that there's a lack of psychosocial support for people who are victims to the catastrophes and the natural disasters. So access to mental health during emergencies and catastrophes is not a luxury, but it's a very fundamental component of disaster response and recovery to save lives and prevent psychological long-term effects or psychological harm. This presentation will be focusing on mental health service accessibility during the crisis and also the barriers that exist from accessing these mental health services, how we can build up evidence-based strategies for improving support systems, especially in the global context, as mental health is now a global social issue. With all the suicides that are taking place on a regular, and also the wars in different areas. So yeah, that is my introduction. So what are some of the effects that climate change have on mental health and well-being? So there are a few factors that I chose to highlight. Mostly we are seeing that as climate change is happening, it's also negatively affecting the mental health and emotional well-being of the people, especially around the world. We can see that there is a clear relationship between increased temperatures and a number of suicide cases. So that is increasing by the day as the climate is changing, as the temperatures are rising. We are also seeing that there's a higher number of suicides. So this eventually now falls into severe distress because of the extreme weather conditions. And these can be called either eco-anxiety or eco-distress, hence why I put a stroke over there. And so what is eco-anxiety or what is eco-distress? These are a wide range of emotions and thoughts that people may experience when they hear bad news about like our planet and the environment, or they're hearing that maybe there was a landslide or there was a natural disaster that happened, or that their weather focus is maybe predicting heavy rains, or they're predicting a hurricane or any other disaster that could be predicted by the weather forecast team. So now this causes a wide range of emotions between people, among people rather in the community, to say most of them, especially those that are coming from vulnerable places and marginalized communities, those that do not have a cushioning and great support, are mostly at stake when it comes to equal anxiety and distress. So over here, I have a case study of Asia, who is a Malawian. She was affected by the famous cyclone Freddy that took place in 2023. And this was the longest tropical cyclone that has ever taken place in the world. So Asia is a 28-year-old single mother, or at the time was a 28-year-old single mother. She was farming for support, to support her children and support her families as well. And so when the floods hit, it was endlessly raining. And due to that, Asia had sent her 4 children to stay with their grandmother's house, which was more stable than her own. But unfortunately, the flood still took away her mother's house, killing almost all her children. And the loss of her children for Asia was very devastating because she was only able to save her mother's life, but was not able to save her children. And so in the aftermath of these floods, we see that Asia is telling of how frightening the rains can be, and also the lasting trauma impact that these events had on her. So this is Asia, a person that has lived experience from the catastrophes and emergencies that are happening in our world, in the Malawian context. So what are some of the effects of natural disasters on sub-Saharan Africa? I'm speaking for sub-Saharan Africa because that's where I mostly come from. And for those of you that do not know the sub-Saharan African countries, there's Zimbabwe, there's Zambia, there's Malawi, there's South Africa, there's Lesotho, there's Botswana, there's Mozambique, there's Madagascar, and Tanzania, and those countries are part of the sub-Saharan Africa. So when these cyclones happened, according to the United Nations, a number of people were affected by the cyclone. A total of about 389,300, with 226,000 coming from Madagascar and more than 163 100,000 from Mozambique. During the time, there was a lot of damage to public infrastructure, and the services that were reported, like classrooms, were destroyed, which nearly affected about 20,700 pupils. So we're seeing that also, since most of the people in these areas rely on farming, most of the crops at the time were at the maturity stage, but they got destroyed, and this really affected the people in Malawi and Mozambique because these were their staple foods, the food that they rely on, and so that also is bringing in was bringing in hunger. And with the poverty that is already there, it was really increasing and striking. And we are also seeing that not only were the crops that were matured affected, but we're also seeing that about 27,800 houses were displaced and were destroyed, and 13,760 of them were partially damaged, and 12,430 households were flooded, which was such a tragedy and is still a tragedy considering that these now have long-term psychological effects on the victims of these natural disasters. So, what are some of the barriers of access to mental health services? The first one that I would see is a real huge issue is stigma and cultural barriers. Most people do not believe that mental health is important, and also they perceive a person with mental illness as somebody who is mad or crazy and cannot function in society. And so this hinders a lot of people from seeking the professional help that they deserve for them to cope with the mental distress that they are facing, or rather the mental health condition that they might be suffering from. So the stigma is really a huge barrier to accessing mental health services because a lot of people do not want to look weak, or they do not want to look feeble, like maybe they don't belong in society just because they've got a mental illness. So that is one barrier to accessing mental health services. Another aspect or another barrier to accessing mental health services is the resource scarcity. We are seeing that there is sufficient trained mental health professionals, and so this also hinders people from seeking the help that they need, because if there are no trained mental health professionals, then who do they go to for their mental health needs, right? So the resource scarcity is a barrier to mental health accessing of services. Another point is that of inadequate funding prioritization. We see that there is a lot of focus on physical survival and physical health, unlike mental health. And so that causes mental health to be underfunded. And if mental health is underfunded, it means that there's going to be a huge gap or a huge number of people experiencing mental health problems or conditions and mental illnesses from getting the assistance that they need, or this the support that they need. Also, the shortage of medications and supplies in hospitals and in other institutions is also a barrier to people from accessing mental health services. Because if there's no medication and there's a shortage of supply of medication, it means it cannot cater to a large population. So that is also an issue when it comes to resources in mental health. The final barrier that I can talk about this morning or this afternoon in India is competing priorities. We see that there's a focus on immediate physical survival, like I said earlier, that we are focusing more on the physical needs, like the hunger part. We are focusing maybe on the other diseases, non-communicable diseases like cancer, tuberculosis, malaria, and the like, that we are not really giving more time, or we're not really considering mental health. And so that causes mental health to continue to dwindle in our communities and societies, leaving a lot of people untreated and causing long-term psychological impacts. So there's also that limited awareness towards mental health, which is very important, especially for social work students right now. If you're in your if you're studying for your social work degree, these are some of the areas that you can look into to focus on after you graduate, so that you can add on to the number of the professionals that are working towards reducing the stigma and discrimination towards mental health and access to mental health services. So how do we now access services in building resilience, right? So the first part is looking at the psychological first aid, which is the immediate mental health response in emergencies. And this model or this framework has been adapted from World Health Organization mental health framework. The first one is to train responders through workshops and organize resources before the disaster strike. So this is a call to action to say that we all need to be aware that disasters could strike. I remember of recently hearing the story of the Ahmedabad plane crash. And I think for me, that was pretty disturbing, because I thought of the students that lost their lives, but also the families that had a loss, that lost a loved one during that emergency. That must have been very difficult for those families. And so having mental health at the forefront of issues like this is very important, because in that way you're reducing the long-term psychological impacts that these disasters or these emergencies could have. Another part of building resilience and also accessing mental health services is first to assess the needs in the community, what mental health needs are lacking in that particular community or society. What are some of the needs that the people there are facing? What is the acute mental health condition that is affecting that particular community? Is it acute depression, or maybe eco anxiety, or maybe it is post-traumatic stress disorder after experiencing a very traumatic event? It's possible for a person to get flashbacks from that particular event. And so what are the needs of the community? What are the safety concerns of the community? And also in that particular time, what is the immediate distress? So looking at all of these factors would help in building resilience when it comes to reducing the long-term psychological impacts. And then we're also looking at approaching mental health with empathy, to say, okay, if this was my situation, how would I react to it, instead of labeling people and also stigmatizing them, to say, oh, okay, you're just worried about a small issue, like that's not an issue. And yet we cannot generalize mental health issues. They come about differently to everyone. They might be the same symptoms, but they could be different in the way that people react. So providing emotional support without forcing a discussion would also be great, because I think most of the times the people that are affected by mental health problems or mental health issues do not necessarily want to talk at the time. And so forcing a discussion would not be more ideal, but offering emotional support is very important in such instances. Connecting people to services, that is mental health service providers, institutions, mental health hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and also providing information and social supports. Those are like self-help groups, which I know India has a lot because of my experience with fieldwork when I was there. There are a lot of self-help groups, mostly among women. So I would also encourage the men to also have such self-help groups because they're very important when it comes to mental health. Also ensuring that there's evidence-based practice and comprehensive support at all levels. So this is now, we're not just looking at maybe children or adolescents or maybe just the middle-aged group, but we're looking at all age groups to provide them with comprehensive support so that they're able to reduce their mental health, psychological long-term effects. So now coming to almost the conclusion of my presentation, I have me a group of women over there. So these women are from the lakeshore areas of Malawi. This was a mental health peer group counseling that was taking place. So these were women that were affected by depression, mostly postpartum depression after giving birth. So they would come together like this and just discuss some solutions to their problems. Hence the facilitator holding a booklet. That booklet is from World Health Organization and it has a framework on interpersonal psychotherapy groups. So this helps the women to reduce their depression levels. And most of the women here have attested that these support groups were very helpful for them and very important, especially when it comes to taking care of the young ones. But how can we strengthen support when it comes to emergencies and catastrophes? The first one is promoting community-based mental health programs. So making sure that every community has a mental health program is important, where you can form these support groups based on any mental health condition, whether it is PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder, or depression, and stress and anxiety, just to mention a few. The other one is to look into trauma-informed psychotherapy. So this is talk therapy, where you encourage more of the cognitive behavioral therapy because you want to have this person recover from the trauma that they have faced after going through emergencies and catastrophic events. And then also coming up with comprehensive mental health clinics. These mental health clinics are very important because that's where it's the immediate place people can access mental health services. But not only having mental health clinics, also integrating with the primary health care institutions. So integrating mental health in primary health care and not just physical health. So this is strengthening support. That's the conclusion of the slide. And so these were my sources. This is where I got most of my information. I got them from Farmers Review Africa, Clayton 24, Action 8, and Care Climate Change. And so, yeah, thank you so much. This is the end of my presentation. One of my favorite quotes is from Mahatma Gandhi, which says, "The future depends on what we do in the present." So what we can do now is to strengthen the mental health community-based programs. So this is where I end my presentation. Thank you so much, Neha, ma'am. If there are any questions, I'll be free to answer.
The only thing I would like to say here, Kate, that you have really made this presentation as well as the discussion very interesting with your all case studies. Of course, we have also heard about your case studies related to India plane crash, Ahmedabad plane crash, which has really not shaken everybody physically, but mentally people are so traumatized that yesterday in the newspaper I was reading about Mr. Kumar Vishwas, who is the only survivor from that plane crash, and he has written in his note that still he cannot sleep in the night because he feels that something bad is happening to me, or something bad is happening to the other family members. And the things what has happened that day is very much fresh in his heart and eyes, where he feels that the same incident will occur again and again to him or maybe some other people of the family, and he is very much traumatized with this condition. So he was very much disturbed, and the whole article is given in the newspaper, which we have, if we can see it, we can feel is that how this resilience is very much important in all of us, that how we can bounce back, how we can come up with, again. It will not take place in a day. It will take a slowly, gradually a process, but yes, it can get healed through, again, as you said it in your conclusion, that community based services, if it is there, once we talk with the people again and again on the same thing, being with the community, being with a individual talk or a case study kind of if we take it, I think so we can really heal those things in months or maybe in a year. But yes, that can be done because emotional help is very much required these days. I'm not saying about physical help is not required. That is to be there, but emotional support is required too much to the young people, and especially to the people who are actually facing these days a natural disaster at their places. We can see in a news channels that at these places we have seen a tsunami or some other like this, we had a flood also in India. We have seen in so many states the floods are coming, so nearby areas of the flood, the people are so much traumatized that they really need to have this resilience, they really need to have this mental health support, people talking to them and coming to help to them. And yes, it will not take one day to get over it. It will take a time, but this can take place. Yes, thank you so much, Miss Kate, for joining us and be here, as we have our another expert with us, Miss Nikiwe. So I would like Miss Meghavi to welcome her. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Kate, for your words. It shows that how your empathy, care, compassion, and your professional dedication has transformed lives. It's really recommendable to hear from you all that. And now I welcome Miss Nikiwe here for this webinar. Um, for all other present here, Ms. Nikiwe is a Malvin mental health advocate, sociologist, and the executive director and the co-founder of Rugare Mental Health Organization, a youth-led NGO that works to raise awareness, normalize mental health conversations, and promote the space to open dialogue and support. She is pursuing her master's in mental health and behavior change communication at the Malawi University of Business and Applied Science, where her research focuses on the youth substance abuse and information access. Through her work, she continues to campaign empathy, inclusion, and empowerment in mental health. Ma'am, we really are happy to have you here, and I would like to request you to share your views on this topic, please. Handing over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. So let me share my screen so that we can go through the presentation together. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So, the presentation today will be on strengthening mental health resilience in times of emergencies and catastrophes on the Malawian context. So, Malawi is one of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa that has been affected by the change in climate. So there have been a lot of emergencies like floods, droughts,
and also health outbreaks like cholera and hunger, which have left lasting impacts on various communities. And it's important to know that these emergencies, they're not just physical events. They also shake emotional, social, and psychological stability. And here in Malawi, mental health services remain limited. That's why it's very, very important to strengthen resilience so that there is recovery and healing in these communities. So, like I've mentioned, the emergencies that affect Malawi, that have been affecting Malawi over the years, have been the frequent natural disasters. So we're talking about the floods, the droughts, and also the cyclones, but also public health emergencies. For example, COVID-19. This was, of course, affecting a lot of countries. It was globally, and Malawi was not left out. It was very much affected by COVID-19. But we also have the frequent cholera outbreaks that um, really leave people in a state of emergency. We also have hunger and food insecurity, which is also an emergency because this affects not only the nutritional value of our bodies, but also it affects our psychological aspects. So here in Malawi, there's limited mental health infrastructure, and there are also limited mental health professionals. And mental health stigma is very prevalent, which really doesn't foster open discussions for mental health. So now, what is mental health resilience? It's our ability to adapt or cope from things in the face of adversity. How do we cope when we are, in these situations of emergencies or catastrophes? How do we cope? So it's not really about avoiding the pain or disregarding that we are going through tragedies and emergencies, but it's more about finding ways to keep moving, to keep hopeful, and also to stay connected with our communities, our families, and our friends. And resilience matters in emergencies because it helps people cope. So even before the emergencies happen and during the emergencies and after the emergencies, when individuals and communities are resilient, it helps them cope better with the emotional pain that they experience, and it also reduces the long-term psychological effects of these emergencies. And it also supports recovery as resilient people are better able to rebuild. Like if the individuals and the communities that are affected by these emergencies, let's say cyclones, and they have had their houses washed away, the infrastructure in the communities has been washed away, the more resilient they are, the more they'll be able to bounce back and recover from these tragedies that happen to them, which in turn empowers these communities. And it sustains hope and also purpose when everything seems lost. Because, when those emergencies happen and your life has literally been shaken and turned around, it's very easy for people to be hopeless and think that, the world is ending. But the more we instill resilience in individuals and communities, this sustains hope and also purpose. People can, be hopeful, like life, this is not the end of life. It's possible to rebuild and, live life as we were. So what are the factors that build resilience? The One of them is social support, especially in instances where the emergency is happening in a community where, a lot of people in that community are affected by this. It's very important to encourage the people or the individuals in these communities to build strong support networks, because, when you're able to share a relatable stressor with somebody, when you feel seen, when you feel heard, it sort of lightens your load. So it's very important to maintain good support networks, and also as access to information and care, because sometimes people don't even realize that, the emergencies that happen have affected them psychologically. They might only just be looking at the physical elements, like I've lost my house, I've lost my land, my farm. But when they have the accurate information, they know that there's such a thing as psychological effects of these emergencies. Then that way they're able to care for their mental health better. And also, positive coping strategies and hope also builds resilience in individuals. So the hidden impact, the psychological impacts of these emergencies, it's really, it's we could say it's invisible and it remains untreated because, for example, when a cyclone happens, it washes away houses, it overturns communities. Not many people really discuss the psychological impact that these emergencies have, but these psychological impacts, they are very deep. They can even run deeper than the physical impacts because with the physical, you can rebuild that community. Maybe it can take 3 to 5 years to rebuild that community. But imagine somebody who has lost their family, they have lost all their children, they have lost literally the important people in their lives. That cut, it runs very, very deep. And if it remains untreated, it's very, it's going to affect that person in the long term. They have trauma, they have PTSD from that emergency that happened to them. So one of the things that people experience, there's anxiety, there's trauma, there's grief, there's depression, but also loss of identity and social connection. Like I said, your life has been turned over. It's like, who am I? My whole house has been destroyed. Everything, all my personal belongings in that house, they are gone. So some people may experience loss of identity, but also hopelessness and despair and family strain. Like some families have been separated in those emergencies. The floods have washed away, the father has gone to another location, the mother another location, the children. So it's like there's a lot of family strain and also reduced productivity and focus and fear of future disasters. So the mental health impact of emergencies, it really often remains invisible and untreated. So, who are the vulnerable groups when these emergencies happen? Basically, it's everyone because it comes from children and adolescents who may experience fear and confusion when these things are happening. But also, we know there's a lot of disruption of school when communities have been overturned, schools have been destroyed, families have been displaced. And the women also have increased caregiving demands. How should I care for my children, especially in instances where the children have been washed away to different locations. You can just imagine how panicked these women can be looking for their children and everything like that. And also men, there's the constant pressure to remain strong. As we all know how we are in the communities, we raise men sort of with an iron fist where they don't really have to show their emotions. They have to remain strong and composed. And this really has a deep psychological impact on them. And this usually leads to untreated depression because, they don't come forward and they don't really have people who also look out for them to, question how their mental health is doing during these emergencies, as well as people with disabilities who face physical barriers, especially in instances where there's floods and everything. So now, how do we strengthen mental health resilience? We have to look at it holistically. We don't just have to think about during the emergencies. We have to start before the emergencies come. How prepared should we be to face these tragedies? So it's important to train community mental health champions. So these are different individuals in the community. It could be teachers, faith leaders, youth leaders, community leaders, just those people in these communities that have a voice and that have that power to influence perspectives in the communities. It's very important to train these individuals in issues to do with mental health, and also the inclusion of mental health education in schools as well as public awareness campaigns, and the integration of mental health into disaster preparedness plans. When governments and organizations are planning for the disaster preparedness, it's very important to also have a section where they're talking about the psychological effects that these disasters can have on the individuals and on the communities. And now, during these emergencies, the flood has happened, the cyclone has happened. What should we do? It's important to provide psychological first aid through frontline responders and health workers. So, when the support is going through to the communities, you see organizations and government and individuals, well wishers, sending through, for example, food to these communities or shelter or clothing. It's also important to incorporate the psychological element in these efforts to also care for the individual's psychological. Also, it's important to provide safe spaces for children, women, and men to express emotions freely. Right there in the camps, it's important to have those psychological first aiders, have designated areas where each demographic can come through and share how the emergencies, how they have impacted their mental health, and also the use of radio and mobile platforms to share coping strategies and support. Especially now in this digital world, it's very important to make use of these community radios and also mobile platforms. Maybe some of the individuals there still have access to their phones, or they still have access to, the radio. It's important to keep on spreading these messages so that despite encouraging them that about the physical element, it's also important for them to understand and acknowledge that this emergency also has, an impact on their mental health, and sharing positive coping strategies with these communities, and also ensuring that mental health services are part of emergency relief effort. Now, after the emergency has happened, how do we help them rebuild now in the psychological terms? It's important to establish support groups and also encourage community dialogue to process this trauma. Like I mentioned before, it's very good to have a network of people who you can relate with. When you have an issue, when you're sharing it with people who have also gone through a similar issue, it's very, you feel very good and acknowledged and seen and heard. So it's very important to encourage these support groups so that people can collectively process the trauma, but also providing follow-up counseling and trauma recovery programs for survivors. As much as the support groups are good, but some people do not thrive in group settings. So it's also important to have programs that are tailored to meet the different needs that these communities and the individuals might have, and also to monitor and evaluate emotional recovery across the affected populations. It's good to have, data to, it's also good for like to seeing how the impacts, the effects of the emergencies have had on the community's psychological being. It helps in tailoring future interventions, and it also helps in being more prepared for, for future interventions. So what are the challenges that we face? I mentioned a couple of them as I was going through the presentation. um, the first one being the limited mental health professionals, and also the persistent mental health stigma and myths, especially in the rural communities where access to mental health information is a bit limited. We also have economic hardships, which heighten stress, as well as limited funding and emergency integration for mental health. So, this is not just in terms of times of emergencies, but in general, there's limited funding that goes to the mental health sector, as well as cultural silence, which it leads to also low community awareness and early detection of mental health struggles, because the communities, they're not aware that there's such a thing as mental health, and there's also a lot of stigma and cultural silence on the same. So there's really late detection of these mental health struggles. So moving forward, what needs to be done? It's very important to integrate mental health into emergency response plans, and also strengthen community based services and encourage support groups. It's also important to train more individuals in psychological first aid, so that when these emergencies happen, we have a great number of people who are sent out in these communities to assist during these times of emergencies, as well as awareness campaigns to reduce the stigma, and collaboration between the government, the NGOs, as well as the different communities. There is need to increase funding for mental health services, and also to normalize mental health conversations in schools and also in communities. And lastly, to use the radio and mobile platforms for mental health education. So, as I am coming to a conclusion, what are the key takeaways of this presentation? It's very important to know and understand that these emergencies, they don't just impact the bodies and infrastructure, they don't just impact the physical beings, but they shake minds, they shake emotions, and they also shake social networks. And it's important to look at emergency relief holistically, with the incorporation of the psychological well-being. And it's important to know that vulnerability is multifaceted. So it's not only children and women, or people with disabilities only, even men are affected. Everybody, as long as they have gone through that emergency, they each are affected differently. And this understanding is also going to help us in tailoring interventions that are, you know, specifically for this demographics, depending on how they were affected by the build. It's very possible to build through support. And it's also very important to keep the community and the youth engaged in issues to do with mental health. And lastly, collaboration, as I mentioned, it's important for the government, for the NGOs, for individuals, for well wishers, for all the people who go out and looking out for these communities to collaborate, so that when they're going to these communities, they're able to each have something that they're going to assist in, and that way the issues are covered holistically. So, as I conclude, I would like to leave with a quote that says, "We cannot stop disasters, but we can prevent them from breaking our spirit by holding one another through the aftermath." This is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Your deeply said words and thought-provoking talk. We are truly delighted to hear your perspectives and inspired by your efforts in promoting mental health advocacy globally. I would now like to call Dr. Neha Dubey, ma'am, to take over the session. She's assistant professor at Faculty of Social Work, Parul University. Along with it, she's social work expert and researcher. Dr. Dubey has been associated with Parul University for over 6 years. Her contribution has been dedicatedly specified in the terms of educator, researcher, and mentor in the field of social work. She holds a PhD in social work, a Master of Social Work, and an also degree of law, that is LLB, with a specialization in business law. Her multidisciplinary background enriches her teaching approach and research perspective, allowing her to bridge academic knowledge with practical understanding. We are happy to have you with us today, ma'am, and we request you to kindly share your insights on the theme.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to Ms. Nikiwe for joining the webinar and as well as contributing to the webinar about catastrophic and emergencies. Firstly, we all need to understand about catastrophic and emergencies, that it is not for any target group, it is for all of us. It is for the people whoever stays on this earth, that anything can happen to anything, anyone, uh, into this emergencies may happen, and then how we are resilient with these emergencies, how we are coping up with these in these emergencies. That is a very nice thing Miss Nikiwe has told in the webinar, that collaboration, trained professionals are very important for coming up and breaking the barriers from this mental health. So thank you, Miss Nikiwe. Now I would also like to contribute few things as we are running short of time, but still I have a presentation and I will share it here, and I'll go a little fast. I'll go a little fast as you know we are running out of time. So is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yeah, so strengthening mental health resilience in times of catastrophes and emergencies. So when we talk about emergencies, that means we need to reach to the people who are into a place where they need help. So here I'm going to talk about in the presentation that focuses on understanding the psychological impacts of disaster and ways to build resilient in individuals and communities. So here, disaster cause not only physical damage but also emotional sufferings. Mental health issues increase significantly during crisis, but often remains unnoticed and untreated. Here, the strategies and statistics. The World Health Organization reports that 1 in 5 people exposed to conflict or disaster suffer from depression, anxiety, PTSD, or severe mental disorders. Most affected individuals experience distress symptoms like anxiety, sadness, sleep problems, and irritable reactions that are normal but often overlooked. The cascading impact mental health disorder can more than double during humanitarian crisis. Overwhelming communities and health system, the psychological toll often persists long after physical infrastructure is rebuilt, creating invisible wounds that require intentional healing. Vulnerable population at risk: women and older adults, children's, first responders, and pre-existing conditions. Here women and older adults experience higher stress and anxiety. Children's affects due to loss of routine and caregiver separations. First responders face a burnout and PTSD. People with the pre-existing mental conditions face a difficulty in assessing treatment during crisis. Is my slide moving? Hello. Yes.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yes, yes, okay. So here now, beyond physical loss, the emotional toll of distress, survivors may experience grief, confusion, fear, and emotional numbness. Emotional scares may last months or years even after physical rebuilding. I would again talk about here one of the incident which happened, I think around 24 to 25 years back, when we had an earthquake in India and Gujarat state, and it was like 7 point was some magnitude. And during that time, one of my family friend had experienced a traumatic condition in their family only, because the other building where they were staying, the other building was collapsing in front of them. So just seeing that building collapsing in front of their eyes, the daughter was not sleeping for nights, months, and she was like feeling that if she sleeps, then I think so this building is going to get collapsed and we all may die together. So this fear was not letting her to sleep. So this took her a year to, rebuild herself, to come out of that trauma, and to change her mindset, to take out her from such trauma. Her parents also changed the place of stay. So this is what all actually happens, that the emotional toll is much much higher than the physical toll. Here, what is resilience? What does it mean? The resilience isn't about being invulnerable or never feeling pain. It's ability to adapt, recover, and even grow stronger after experiencing trauma or adversity. Core resilient traits: strong problem solving skills and flexible thinking, emotional regulation, and self awareness. Resilience is about being unaffected from crisis. The key components include emotional awareness, problem solving, social support, self belief, and optimism. Core traits of resilient individuals is psychological first aid, community self-help, integrated disaster planning, crisis counseling help, immediate emotional practical support provided by the trained responders can significantly reduce acute distress and prevent long-term complications. These interventions focuses on safety, connections, and hope. Community self-help groups, rebuilding social network fosters collective problem solving and shared healing. Peer support creates a safe space where survivors can process, experience, and rediscover their strengths together. Integrated disaster planning is the Shamsha and WHO strongly recommend embedding a mental health services at all response levels, from immediate crisis intervention to long-term recovery support, rather than treating it as an afterthought. Crisis counseling and health lines. Round the clock resources like Shamsa's disaster distress helpline, the number is provided, provide critical support when traditional services are disrupted and inaccessible inaccessible. Case studies of Hawaii's responses to the 2023 Maui wildfires. Here, in the case study, there were over 100 deaths and massive displacement triggered widespread PTSD, depressions, and anxiety throughout the island community. Entire neighborhood were destroyed, leaving thousands traumatized. Coordinated response, that how the emergency was taken care after that emergency. Hawaii Office of Wellness and Resilience rapidly deploy comprehensive service including in-person counseling, telehealth options, and school-based mental health support and to reach affected population. Community engagement, strategic use of 988 hotline combined with a culturally sensitive community outreach help reduce stigma and dramatically improve process access to care for native Hawaiian and other vulnerable population. Lesson learned: the response demonstrated the transformative power of coordination, culturally sensitive mental health services in disaster recovery, turning tragedy into a model for future emergency preparedness. So, this is what the case study is talking about, how we can respond to any emergency and how we can prepare ourselves mentally, that how we can help other people, how we can intervene, how we can reach to the people who are into such conditions or need a help. I would not go in details as my presentation is long and we are actually about to it is live role of policy and system. I would like to just add here the intervention and what we can do as in a caregiver system training and investment. Um invest in training mental health professional in emergency psychiatry, trauma informed care, and disaster behavioral health competencies, infrastructure resilience, strengthen behavioral health infrastructure to withstand disaster surge through redundant system and flexible resources allocation, strategic partnership, foster public-private partnership to expand community resilience program, and leverages diverse expertise and resources, sustain funding, prioritize long-term funding for integrated disaster behavioral health across preparedness, response, and recovery phases. Resilience is our best defense. Catastrophes will continue. The emergencies will continue, but mental health suffering is not inevitable. Through awareness, preparedness, and compassionate response, we can protect and empower both individuals and community by integrating mental health support into every aspect of disaster planning and recovery. We transform how societies respond to crisis. Let's commit to building mental health resilience as a core pillar of disaster readiness and recover. Together, we can transform trauma into strength, adversity into growth, and despair into hope. Thank you so much for listening to me, and we hope that all come together to work into such catastrophic and emergencies as we all are into social work field, and as in humanitarian also we should come together and we should be prepared for all coming such catastrophes, as we all know that this will happen, this will come, and we should be but ready to help others in emergencies, and how we can handle such conditions and situations. Thank you so much. I here end up my presentation.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comprehensive knowledge, clarity in expression, and engaging such, with great depth contribution to the success of the session. The valuable perspectives you have shared has given us a meaningful learning and inspiration to all the participants, I hope. And ma'am, it has added on a truly based a great depth to today's discussion. So moving further, now I would like to invite our respected Dean Sir, Professor Dr. M.N. Parmar, to share his concluding thoughts on expert talks and key takeaways from today's session.
Thank you.
Sir, we are not able to hear you.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Now you're audible.
Yes. So anyway, it was a wonderful webinar, and all the areas related to the resilience has been discussed. What is happening at abroad, what is happening in India, and how one should prepare. So it was a wonderful webinar, which has really helped all of us to gain new knowledge in the field of catastrophe I also take this opportunity to thank the coordinator webinar from Parul University. With this note, once again, I thanks all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time and your words. Now we are open for question and comment session for all our participants. If anyone would like to ask our speakers anything, please feel free to unmute and drop your question directly in the webinar itself. Okay, so I think
Meghavi, you are not audible. Please unmute yourself.
hello.
Hi, sorry. Yes.
Okay. I think, ma'am, there's no one having question. I think so. It was so deep and insightful that everyone has got the clarity of the topic, and I think it has made a great efforts from all of you to, turn on the message on the floor and the table they have put on that webinar. So I think, ma'am, we will end up today itself, and I will like to give you a short thankful thought today. As we have come to the end of the session, I would like to take a few minutes that is to thank all our distinguished speakers, Ms. Nikiwe, Ms.Kate, and Dr. Neha today for sharing their valuable time and experience and ideas with us. A heartfelt thanks to our respected Dean Sir, Professor Dr. Parul, for his guidance and continuous support. We all thank our organizers, faculty members, and students from the Parul Institute of Social Work for making this event a success. Let us carry forward today's learning and continue working together to strengthen mental health, resilience, and compassion in our communities. Thank you once again, and we look forward to have future collaborations and meaningful engagement. Thank you so much, ma'am, and have a wonderful days ahead.
Thank you.
Nikiwe, Miss Nikiwe, and Miss Kate, you can just on your camera so that we can click picture.
Okay.
Okay.
It would be great. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Now some
Okay, so I'm taking a
Nikiwe,
picture
I
right
hope you are
now.
taking pictures.
Yeah, I am, ma'am. Everyone, please have a smile on a three go, okay? One, two, and three. Thank you so
Please
much,
take
everyone.
once again. You please take the picture.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Okay, done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.